All right, it is 8 o'clock. So, let's settle down, get comfortable, grab a drink, and get back to our book. Welcome back. This is our third night reading from John Milton's Paradise Lost. This has been a bit of an adventure. It's a lot denser than what we read typically. It actually reminds me a lot of when we read L'Amour d'Arthur. It's a little archaic, a little almost biblical. Not a whole lot of pacing and phrasing and back and forth. It's just relentless. And that's fun in its own way. It sort of sets its own sort of tone and sets the stage for what is happening. What is being described as we're going on. It's of sufficiently epic proportions and feels that way in its delivery. And so, as I mentioned in a post earlier, it's very interesting to see this see this very familiar story being told from the opposite side, from a place of different motivations, and in much, much more detail than you usually will see. Paradise Lost obviously goes much, much, much further into the story of the fall and what came before than anything else that I'm aware of. So it's fleshing things out very neatly. It's one of those fanfics that is generally accepted as basically canon. Let's be real. As far as the general person's understanding or picturing of what hell is, what Eden was, it all comes from Paradise Lost. None of this was in the original source material. So this is the canon usurping by fanfic, which is really appropriate considering it is all about Satan and he's all about usurpation. So, it works, right? And yes, you are right. No matter how dry this gets, no matter how pompous and preachy it gets, it's better than Walden. We can always take comfort that the bar that we need to clear to be not the worst thing we've read on the channel is buried about 6 feet under. It's a comforting feeling to know that we've seen the bottom. So, let's go ahead and jump back into this, because there's a lot to get ahead of, and if we're going to get if we're going to get through 2 books tonight, which so far we've done pretty well, but if we're going to get through them, we'd best keep to it, because these are doozies of chapters. And so, let us resume now with Book 5 of Paradise Lost. Now morn, her rosy steps in the eastern clime advancing, sowed the earth with orient pearl. When Adam waked, so customed, for his sleep was airy light, from pure digestion bred, and temperate vapours bland, which the only sound of leaves and fuming rills Aurora's fan, lightly dispersed, and the shrill matin song of birds on every bough. So much the more his wonder was to find unawakened Eve, with tresses discomposed, and glowing cheek, as through unquiet rest, he, on his side leaning, half raised, with looks of cordial love, hung over her enamoured, and beheld beauty, which, whether waking or asleep, shot forth peculiar glances. Then, with voice mild, as when Zephyrus on Flora breathes, her hand soft touching, whispered thus, "Awake, my fairest, my espoused, my latest found, heaven's last best gift, my ever new delight. Awake, the morning shines, and the fresh field calls us. We lose the prime, to mark how spring our tender plants, how blows the citron grove, what drops the myrrh, and what the balmy reed. How nature paints her colors, and how the bee sits on the bloom, extracting liquid sweet. Such whispering waked her, but with startled eye on Adam, whom embracing thus she spake. O soul, in whom my thoughts find all repose, my glory, my perfection, glad I see thy face and morn returned, for I this night, such night till this I never passed, have dreamed, if dreamed, not, as I often want, of thee, works of day past, or morrow's next design, but of offence and trouble, which my mind never knew till this irksome night. Methought, close at mine ear, one called me forth to walk, with gentle voice. I thought it thine. It said, Why sleepest thou, Eve? Now is the pleasant time, the cool, the silent, save where silence yields to the night-warbling bird, that now awake, tunes sweetest his love-laboured song, now reigns full-orbed the moon, and with more pleasing light, shadowy sets off the face of things, in vain, if none regard. Heaven wakes with all his eyes, whom to behold but thee, nature's desire, in whose sight all things joy, with ravishment attracted by thy beauty still to gaze. I rose, as at thy call, but found thee not. To find thee I directed then my walk, and on, methought, alone, I passed through ways that brought me on a sudden to the tree of interdicted knowledge. Fair it seemed, much fairer to my fancy than by day. And as I wondering looked, beside it stood one shaped and winged, like one of those from heaven. By a soft scene, his dewy locks distilled ambrosia. On that tree he also gazed. And, O fair plant, said he, with fruit surcharged, deigns none to ease thy load, and taste thy sweet. Nor God, nor man, is knowledge so despised. Or envy, or what reserve forbids to taste. Forbid who will, none shall from me withhold longer thy offered good. Why else sit here? This said, he paused not, but with venturous arm he plucked, he tasted me, damp horror, chilled at such bold words, vouched with a deed so bold. But he thus, overjoyed, O fruit divine, sweet of thyself, but much more sweet thus cropped, forbidden here, it seems, as only fit for gods, yet able to make gods of men. And why not gods of men? Since good, the more communicated, more abundant grows, the author not impaired, but honoured more. Here, happy creature, fair angelic Eve, partake thou also. Happy though thou art, happier thou mayest be, worthier canst not be. Taste this, and be henceforth among the gods thyself a goddess. Not to earth confined, but sometimes in the air, as we sometimes ascend to heaven, by merit thine, and see what life the gods live there, and such live thou. So saying he drew nigh, and to me held, even to my mouth, that same fruit, held part which he had plucked. The pleasant savoury smell so quickened appetite that I, methought, could not but taste. Forthwith up to the clouds with him I flew, and underneath beheld the earth, outstretched immense, a prospect wide and various, wondering at my flight and change to this high exaltation. Suddenly my guide was gone, and I, methought, sunk down and fell asleep. But oh, how glad I waked to find this but a dream. Thus Eve her night related, and thus Adam answered sad. Best image of myself, and dearer half, the trouble of thy words this night in sleep affects me equally, nor can I like this uncouth dream of evil sprung, I fear. Yet evil whence? In thee can harbour none, created pure. But know that in the soul are many lesser faculties that serve reason as chief. Among these fancy next her office holds, of all external things, which the 5 watchful senses represent. She forms imaginations, airy shapes, which reason, joining or disjoining, frames all that we affirm or what deny, and call our knowledge or opinion, then retires into her private cell when nature rests. Oft in her absence mimic fancy wakes to imitate her, but misjoining shapes wild work produces oft, and most in dreams. Ill-matching words and deeds, long past or late. Some such resemblances, methinks, I find of our last evening's talk, in this thy dream. But with addition strange, yet be not sad. Evil into the mind of God or man may come and go, so unreproved, and leave no spot or blame behind, which gives me hope, that what in sleep thou didst abhor to dream, waking thou never will consent to do. Be not disheartened then, nor cloud those looks, that won't be more cheerful and serene than when fair morning first smiles on the world. And let us to our fresh employments rise among the groves, the fountains, and the flowers, that open now their choicest bosomed smells, reserved from night and kept for thee in store. So cheered he his fair spouse, and she was cheered. But silently a gentle tear let fall from either eye, and wiped them with her hair. 2 other precious drops that ready stood, each in their crystal sluice, he, ere they fell, kissed, as the gracious signs of sweet remorse and pious awe, that feared to have offended. So all was cleared, and to the field they haste. But first, from under shady arborous roof, soon as they forth were come to open sight of day-spring, and the sun, who scarce uprisen, with wheels yet hovering o'er the ocean brim, shot parallel to the earth this dewy ray, discovering in wide landscape all the east of paradise and Eden's happy plains. Lowly they bowed adoring, and began their orisons, each morning duly paid, in various style, for neither various style nor holy rapture wanted they to praise their Maker, in fit strains pronounced or sung unmeditated. Such prompt eloquence flowed from their lips, in prose or numerous verse, more tunable than needed lute or harp. To add more sweetness, they thus began. These are thy glorious works, parent of good, almighty, thine this universal frame, thus wondrous fair, thyself how wondrous then! Unspeakable, who sittest above these heavens, to us invisible, or dimly seen in these thy lowest works. Yet these declare thy goodness beyond thought, and beyond power divine. Speak, ye who best can tell, ye sons of light, angels, for ye behold him, and with songs and choral symphonies day without night circle his throne rejoicing. Yea, in heaven, on earth, join all ye creatures to extol him first, him last, him midst, and without end. Fairest of stars, last in the train of night, if better thou belong not to the dawn. Sure pledge of day, that crownest the smiling morn, with thy bright circlet, praise him in thy sphere, while day arises, that sweet hour of prime. Thou son, of this great world both eye and soul acknowledge him thy greater. Sound his praise in thy eternal course, both when thou climbest and when high noon hast gained, and when thou fallest. Moon, that now meetest the orient sun, now fliest, with the fixed stars fixed in their orb that flies, and ye 5 other wandering fires, that move in mystic dance not without song, resound his praise. Who out of darkness called up light, air, and ye elements, the eldest birth of nature's womb, that in quaternion run perpetual cycle, multiform, and mix and nourish all things. Let your ceaseless change vary to our great Maker still new praise. Ye mists and exhalations that now rise from hill or steaming lake, dusky or grey, till the sun paint your fleecy skirts with gold, in honor to the world's great author rise, whether to deck with clouds the uncolored sky, or wet the thirsty earth with falling showers. Rising or falling still advance his praise, ye winds, that from four quarters blow, breathe soft or loud, and wave your tops, ye pines, with every plant in sign of worship wave. Fountains, and ye that warble as ye flow, melodious murmurs warbling tune his praise. Join voices, all ye living souls, ye birds that singing up to heaven gate ascend, bear on your wings and in your notes his praise. Ye that in waters glide, and ye that walk the earth, and stately tread or lowly creep, witness, if I be silent, mourn, or even, to hill or valley, fountain or fresh shade, made vocal by my song, and taught his praise. Hail, universal Lord, be bounteous still to give us only good, and if the night hath gathered aught of evil, or concealed, disperse it, as now light dispels the dark. So prayed they innocent, and to their thoughts firm peace recovered soon, and wonted calm. On to their morning's rural work they haste. Among sweet dews and flowers, were any row of fruit trees over woody reached too far, their pampered boughs and needed hands to check fruitless embraces. Or they led the vine to wed her elm, she, spoused about him, twines her marriageable arms, and with him brings her dower, the adopted clusters, to adorn his barren leaves. Them, thus employed, beheld with pity heaven's high king, and to him called Raphael, the sociable spirit, that deigned to travel with Tobias, and secured his marriage with the 7 times wedded maid. Raphael, said he, thou hearest what stir on earth. Satan, from hell scaped through the darksome gulf, hath raised in paradise, and now disturbed this night the human pair. How he designs in them at once to ruin all mankind. Go, therefore, half this day as friend with friend, converse with Adam, in what bower or shade thou findest him from the heat of noon retired, to respite his day labour with repast, or with repose, and such discourse bring on, as may advise him of his happy state, happiness in his power left free to will, left to his own free will, his will, though free, yet mutable. Whence warn him to beware he swerve not too secure. Tell him with all his danger, and from whom, what enemy, late fallen himself from heaven, is plotting now the fall of others from like state of bliss. By violence? No, for that shall be withstood, but by deceit and lies. This let him know, lest wilfully transgressing he pretend surprisal, unadmonished, unforewarned. So spake the elder father, and fulfilled all justice. Nor delayed the winged saint after his charge received, but from among 1,000 celestial ardors, where he stood, veiled with his gorgeous wings, upspringing light, flew through the midst of heaven, the angelic choirs on each hand parting. To his speed gave way through all the imperial road, till at the gate of heaven arrived, the gate self opened wide, on golden hinges turning, as by work divine the sovereign architect had framed, from hence no cloud, or to obstruct his sight, star interposed, however small he sees, not unconformed to other shining globes. Earth, and the garden of God, with cedars crowned above all hills, as when by night the glass of Galileo, less assured, observes imagined lands and regions in the moon. Or Pilate, from amidst the Cyclades, Delos or Samos first appearing, kens as a cloudy spot. Down thither prone in flight he speeds, and through the vast ethereal sky sails between worlds and worlds with steady wing, now on the polar winds, then with quick fan winnows the buxom air, till, within soar of towering eagles, to all the fowls he seems a phoenix, gazed by all as that sole bird, when, to enshrine his relics in the sun's bright temple, to Egyptian Thebes he flies. And once, on the eastern cliff of paradise, he lights, and to his proper shape returns, a seraph winged. 6 wings he wore, to shade his lineaments divine. The pair that clad each shoulder broad, eke came mantling o'er his breast with regal adornment. The middle pair, girt like a starry zone his waist, and round skirted his loins and thighs with downy gold, and colours dipped in heaven. The third, his feet shadowed from either heel with feathered mail. Sky-tinctured grain, like Maya's sun he stood, and shook his plumes, that heavenly fragrance filled the circuit wide. Straight knew him all the bands of angels under watch, and to this state, and to his message high in honour rise, for on some message high they guessed him bound. Their glittering tents he passed, and now is come into the blissful field through groves of myrrh, and flowering odours, cassia, nard, and balm, a wilderness of sweets, for nature here wantoned as in her prime, and played at will, her virgin fancies pouring forth more sweet, wild above rule or art, enormous bliss. Him, through the spicy forest onward come, Adam discerned, as in the door he sat of his cool bower, while now the mounted sun shot down direct his fervid rays to warm earth's inmost womb, more warmth than Adam needs, and Eve within, due at her hour prepared for dinner savoury fruits, of taste to please true appetite, and not disrelish thirst, of nectarous draughts between. From milky stream, berry, or grape, to whom thus Adam called, "Haste hither, Eve, and worth thy sight behold, eastward, among those trees, what glorious shape comes this way moving? Seems another morn risen on mid-noon. Some great behest from heaven to us perhaps he brings, and will vouchsafe this day to be our guest. But go with speed, and what thy stores contain bring forth, and pour abundance, fit to honour and receive our heavenly stranger. Well we may afford our givers their own gifts, and large bestow from large bestowed, where nature multiplies her fertile growth, and by disturbing growth grows more fruitful, which instructs us not to spare. To whom thus Eve, Adam, earth's hallowed mould, of God inspired, small store will serve, where store all seasons, ripe for use hangs on the stalk, save what by frugal storing firmness gains, to nourish, and superfluous moist consumes. But I will haste, and from each bough and brake, each plant and juiciest gourd, will pluck such choice to entertain our angel guest, as he, beholding, shall confess that here on earth God hath dispensed his bounties as in heaven." So saying, with dispatchful looks in haste, she turns on hospitable thoughts intent. What choice to choose for delicacy best? What order so contrived as not to mix tastes? Not well joined, inelegant, but bring taste after taste upheld with kindliest change. Bestirs her then, and from each tender stalk, whatever earth all-bearing mother yields, in India east or west, or middle shore, in Pontus or the Punic coast, or where Alcinous reigned, fruit of all kinds in coat rough, or smooth rind, or bearded husk, or shell she gathers, tribute large, and on the board heaps with unsparing hand. For drink the grape she crushes inoffensive must, and meaths from many a berry, and from sweet kernels pressed she tempers dulcet creams. Nor these to hold wants her fit vessels pure, then strows the ground with rose and odours from the shrub unfumed. Meanwhile, our primitive great sire, to meet his godlike guest, walks forth, without more train, accompanied than with his own complete perfections. In himself was all his state, more solemn than the tedious pomp that waits on princes when their rich retinue long of horses led, and grooms besmeared with gold, dazzles the crowd, and sets them all agape. Nearer his presence Adam, though not awed, yet with submiss approach and reverence meek, as to a superior nature bowing low, thus said, "Native of heaven, for other place none can than heaven such glorious shape contain, since, by descending from the thrones above, those happy places thou hast deigned a while to want and honor these, vouchsafe with us two only, who yet by sovereign gift possess this spacious ground, in yonder shady bower to rest, and what the garden choicest bears to sit and taste, till this meridian heat be over, and the sun more cool decline." Whom thus the angelic virtue answered mild, "Adam, I therefore came, nor art thou such created, or such place hast here to dwell, as may not oft invite those spirits of heaven to visit thee. Lead on then, where thy bower o'ershades, for these mid-hours, till evening rise. I have at will." So to the sylvan lodge they came, and like Pomona's arbor smiled, with flowerets decked and fragrant smells. But Eve, undecked save with herself, more lovely fair than wood-nymph, or the fairest goddess feigned, of three that in Mount Ida naked strove, stood to entertain her guest from heaven. No veil she needed, virtue-proof, no thought infirm altered her cheek. On whom the angel hail bestowed, the holy salutation used, long after to blessed Mary, second Eve. "Hail, mother of mankind, whose fruitful womb shall fill the world more numerous with thy sons than with these various fruits the trees of God have heaped this table. Raised of grassy turf their table was, and mossy seats had round, and on her ample square from side to side all autumn piled. Though spring and autumn here danced hand in hand, a wild discourse they hold. No fear lest dinner cool, when thus began our author, heavenly stranger, pleased to taste these bounties which our nourisher, from whom all perfect good unmeasured out descends, to us for food and for delight hath caused the earth to yield. Unsavory food perhaps to spiritual natures, only this I know, that one celestial Father gives to all, to whom the angel, therefore, what he gives, who praise be ever sung, to man in part spiritual, may of purest spirits be found. No ingrateful food, and food alike those pure intelligential substances require, as doth your rational, and both contain within them every lower faculty of sense, whereby they hear, see, smell, touch, taste, tasting, concoct, digest, assimilate, and corporeal to incorporeal turn. For know, whatever was created needs to be sustained and fed. Of elements, the grosser feeds the purer. Earth and the sea feed air, the air those fires ethereal, and as lowest first the moon, whence in her visage round those spots, unpurged vapours, not yet into her substance turned, nor doth the moon no nourishment exhale. From her moist continent to higher orbs, the sun that light imparts to all receives from all this elemental recompense in humid exhalations, and at even sups with the ocean. Though in heaven the trees of life ambrosial fruitage bear, and vines yield nectar, though from off the boughs each morn we crush mellifluous dews, and find the ground covered with pearly grain, yet God hath here varied his bounty so with new delights, as may compare with heaven, and to taste, think not I shall be nice. So down they sat, and to their viands fell, nor seemingly the angel, nor in mist the common gloss of theologians, but with keen dispatch of real hunger and concoctive heat to transubstantiate. What redounds, transpires through spirits with ease, nor wonder if by fire of sooty coal the empiric alchemist can turn, or holds it possible to turn, metals of drossiest ore to perfect gold, as from the mine. Meanwhile, at table, Eve ministered naked, and their flowing cups with pleasant liquors crowned. O innocence, deserving paradise! If ever then had the sons of God excuse to have been enamored at that sight. But in those hearts, love unlibidinous That's a word. Unlibidinous. Reigned, nor jealously was understood the injured lover's hell. Thus, when with meats and drinks they had sufficed, not burdened to nature, sudden mind arose in Adam, not to let the occasion pass, given him by this great conference to know of things above his world, and of their being who dwell in heaven, whose excellence he saw transcend his own star, his own so far, whose radiant forms, divine effulgence, whose high power so far exceeded human, and his wary speech thus to the imperial minister he framed: Inhabitant with God, now know I well thy favour, in this honour done to man, under whose lowly roof thou hast vouchsafed to enter, and these earthly fruits to taste, food not of angels, yet accepted so, as that more willingly thou couldst not seem at heaven's high feasts to have fed. Yet what compare to whom the winged hierarch replied: O Adam, one Almighty is, from whom all things proceed, and up to him return. If not depraved from good, created all such to perfection. One first matter all, endued with various forms, various degrees of substance, and, in things that live, of life, but more refined, more spirituous and pure, as nearer to him placed, or nearer tending, each in their several active spheres assigned, till body up to spirit work in bounds proportioned to each kind. So from the root springs lighter the green stalk, from thence the leaves more airy. Last, the bright consummate flower spirit's odorous breathes, flowers, and their fruit man's nourishment, by gradual scale sublimed. To vital spirits aspire, to animal, to intellectual, give both life and sense, fancy and understanding, whence the soul reason receives, and reason is her being. Discursive or intrusive discourse is oftest yours, the latter most is ours, differing but in degree, of kind the same. Wonder not then what God for you saw good, if I refuse not, but convert, as you, to proper substance. Time may come when men with angels may participate, and find no inconvenient diet, nor too light fare, and from these corporal nutriments, perhaps, your bodies may at last turn all to spirit, improved by tract of time, and winged ascend ethereal, as we, or may at choice here or in heavenly paradises dwell, if ye be found obedient, and retain unalterably firm his love entire, whose progeny you are. Meanwhile, enjoy your fill, what happiness this happy state can comprehend, incapable of more. To whom the patriarch of mankind replied, O favourable spirit, propitious guest, well hast thou taught the way that might direct our knowledge, and the scale of nature set from centre to circumference, whereon, in contemplation of created things, by steps we may ascend to God. But say, what meant with caution joined? If ye be found obedient, can we want obedience then to him, or possibly his love desert, who formed us from the dust and placed us here, full to the utmost measure of what bliss human desires can seek or apprehend. To whom the angel, son of heaven and earth, attend, that thou art happy, O to God, that thou continuest such, O to thyself, that is, to thy obedience, therein stand. This was that caution given thee, be advised. God made thee perfect, not immutable. And good he made thee, but to persevere he left it in thy power, ordained thy will by nature free, not overruled by fate inextricable or strict necessity. Our voluntary service he requires, not our necessitated. Such with him finds no acceptance, nor can find, for how can hearts not free be tried whether they serve willing or no? Who will but what they must by destiny, and can no longer choose? Myself, and all the angelic host that stand in sight of God enthroned, our happy state hold as you yours, while our obedience holds. On other surety none. Freely we serve, because we freely love, as in our will, to love or not, in this we stand or fall. And some are fallen, to disobedience fallen, and so from heaven to deepest hell, oh, fall from what high state of bliss into what woe? To whom our great progenitor, thy words attentive, and with more delighted ear, divine instructor, I have heard then, when cherubic songs by night from the neighboring hills aureole music send. Nor I knew not, to be both will and deed created free, yet that we never shall forget to love our Maker, and obey him whose command singled is yet so just. My constant thoughts assured me, and still assure, though what thou tellest hath passed in heaven, some doubt within me move, but more desire to hear, if thou consent, the full relation, which must needs be strange, worthy of sacred silence to be heard. And we have yet large day, for scarce the sun hath finished half this journey, and scarce begins his other half in the great zone of heaven. Thus Adam made request, and Raphael, after short pause assenting, thus began. High matter thou enjoinest me, O prime of men. Sad task and hard, for how shall I relate to human sense the invisible exploits of warring spirits? How, without remorse, the ruin of so many glorious once and perfect while they stood? How last unfold the secrets of another world, perhaps not lawful to reveal? Yet for thy good this is dispensed, and what surmounts the reach of human sense I shall delineate so, by likening spiritual to corporal forms, as may express them best. Though what if earth be but a shadow of heaven, and things therein each to each other like, more than on earth is thought? As yet this world was not, and chaos wild reigned where these heavens now roll, where earth now rests upon her center poise, when on a day, for time though an eternity, applied to motion, measures all things durable, by present, past, and future. On such day, as heaven's great year brings forth the imperial host of angels by imperial summons called, innumerable, before the Almighty's throne, forthwith from all the ends of heaven appeared, under their hierarchs in orders bright, 10,000 ensigns high advanced, standards and gonfalons, twixt van and rear stream in the air, and for distinction serve of hierarchies, of orders and degrees, or in their glittering tissues bear emblazoned holy memorials. Acts of zeal and love recorded eminent. Thus, when in orbs of circuit inexpressible they stood, orb within orb, the Father infinite. By whom, in bliss embosomed, sat the Son, amidst as from a flaming mount whose top brightness had made invisible, thus spake, Hear, all ye angels, progeny of light, thrones, dominations, princedoms, virtues, powers, hear my decree, which unrevoked shall stand. This day I have begot whom I declare my only Son, and on this holy hill him have anointed, whom ye now behold at my right hand. Your head I him appoint, and by myself have sworn, to him shall bow all knees in heaven, and shall confess him Lord. Under his great vicegerent reign abide united, as one individual soul, forever happy. Him who disobeys me disobeys, breaks union, and that day, cast out from God and blessed union, falls into utter darkness, deep engulfed, his place ordained without redemption, without end. So spake the Omnipotent, and with his words all seemed well pleased. Where were we? Spaced out a little bit there. Ordained without redemption, without end. So spake the Omnipotent, and with his words all seemed well pleased. All seemed, but were not all. That day, as other solemn days, they spent in song and dance about the sacred hill, mystical dance, which yonder starry sphere of planets and of fixed in all her wheels resembles nearest mazes intricate, eccentric, intervolved, yet regular than most, when most irregular they seem, and in their motions harmony divine, so smooths her charming tones that God's own ear listens delighted. Evening now approached, for we have also our evening and our morn, we ours for change delectable, not need. Forthwith from dance to sweet repast they turn, desirous. All in circles as they stood, tables are set, and on a sudden, piled with angels' food, and ruby nectar flows in pearl, in diamond and massy gold, fruit of delicious vines, the growth of heaven, on flowers reposed, and with fresh flowerets crowned. They eat, they drink, and in communion sweet quaff immortality and joy, secure of surfeit, where full measure only bounds excess. Before the all-bounteous King, who showered with copious hand, rejoicing in their joy. Now an ambrosial night with clouds exhaled from that high mount of God, whence light and shade spring both, the face of brightest heaven had changed to grateful twilight. For night comes not there in darker veil, and roseate dews disposed, all but the unsleeping eyes of God to rest. Wide over all the plain, and wider far than all this globous earth in plain outspread, such are the courts of God, the angelic throng dispersed in bands and files, their camp extend. By living streams among the trees of life, pavilions numberless, and sudden reared celestial tabernacles where they slept, fanned with cool winds, save those who in their course melodious hymns about the sovereign throne alternate all night long. But not so waked Satan, so call him now. His former name is heard no more in heaven. He of the first, if not the first archangel, great in power, in favor and preeminence, yet fraught with envy against the Son of God. That day, honored by his great Father, and proclaimed Messiah, King anointed, could not bear through pride that sight, and thought himself impaired. deep malice thence, conceiving and disdain, soon as midnight brought on the dusky hour, friendliest to sleep and silence, he resolved, with all his legions to dislodge, and leave, unworshipped, unobeyed, the throne supreme. Contemptuous, and his next subordinate, awakening thus to him in secret spake, Sleepest thou, companion dear? What sleep can close thy eyelids, and rememberest what decree of yesterday, so late hath passed the lips of heaven's almighty? Thou to me thy thoughts wast wont, I mine to thee was wont to impart. Both waking we were one. How, then, can now thy sleep dissent? New laws thou seest imposed. New laws from him who reigns, new minds may raise in us who serve, new counsels to debate what doubtful may ensue. More in this place to utter is not safe. Assemble thou of all those myriads which we lead the chief. Tell them that by command, ere yet dim night her shadowy cloud withdraws, I am to haste, and all who under me their banners wave, homeward, with flying march, where we possess the quarters of the north, there to prepare fit entertainment, to receive our King, the great Messiah, and his new commands, who speedily through all the hierarchies intends to pass triumphant and give laws. So spake the false archangel, and infused bad influence into the unwary breast of his associate. He together calls, or several one by one, the regent powers. Under him regent tells as he was taught, that the most high commanding, now ere night, now ere dim night, had disencumbered heaven. The great hierarchical standard was to move. Tells the suggested cause, then casts between ambiguous words and jealousies to sound or taint integrity. But all obeyed the wanted signal, the superior voice of their great potentate. For great indeed his name, and high was his degree in heaven. His countenance, as the morning star that guides the starry flock, allured them, and with lies drew after him the third part of heaven's host. Meanwhile, the eternal eye, whose sight discerns abstrusest thoughts, from forth his holy mount, and from within the golden lamps that burn nightly before him, saw without their light rebellion rising, saw in whom, how spread among the sons of morn, what multitudes were banded to oppose his high decree, and, smiling to his only son, thus said, Son, thou in whom my glory I behold, in full resplendence, heir of all my might, nearly it now concerns us to be sure of our omnipotence, and with what arms we mean to hold what anciently we claim of deity or empire. Such a foe is rising, who intends to erect his throne equal to ours throughout the spacious north, nor so content hath in his thought to try in battle what our power is, or our right. Let us advise, and to this hazard draw with speed what force is left, and all employ in our defence, lest unawares we lose this our high place, our sanctuary, our hill. To whom the sun, with calm aspect and clear lightning, divine, ineffable, serene, made answer, Mighty Father, thou thy foes justly hast in derision, and secure, laughest at their vain designs and tumults vain, matter to me of glory, whom their hate illustrates, when they see all regal power given me to quell their pride, and in event know whether I be dexterous to subdue thy rebels, or be found the worst in heaven. So spake the Son, but Satan, with his powers, far was advanced on winged speed, and host innumerable as the stars of night, or stars of morning, dewdrops, which the sun impearls on every leaf and every flower. Regions they passed, the mighty regencies of seraphim, and potentates, and thrones in their triple degrees. Regions to which all thy dominion, Adam, is no more than what this garden is to all the earth. and all the sea from one entire globose stretched into longitude, which having passed at length into the limits of the north, they came, and Satan to his royal seat high on a hill, far blazing as a mount raised on a mount, with pyramids and towers from diamond quarries hewn and rocks of gold, the palace of great Lucifer, so call that structure in the dialect of men interpreted, which not long after, he affecting all equality with God, in imitation of that mount whereon Messiah was declared in height of heaven, the mountain of the congregation called. For thither he assembled all his train, pretending so commanded to consult about the great reception of their king, thither to come, and with calumnious art of counterfeited truth thus held their ears. Thrones, dominations, princedoms, virtues, powers, in these magnific titles yet remain not merely titular, since by decree another now hath to himself engrossed all power, and us eclipsed under the name of King Anointed. For him all this haste of midnight march and hurried meeting here, this only to consult how we may best, with what may be devised of honors new, receive him coming to receive from us knee tribute yet unpaid, prostration vile. Too much to one, but double how endured. To one, and to his image now proclaimed. But what if better counsels might erect our minds, and teach us to cast off this yoke? Will ye submit your necks, and choose to bend the supple knee? Ye will not, if I trust to know ye right, or if ye know yourselves, natives and sons of heaven, possessed before by none, and if not equal all, yet free. Equally free, for orders and degrees jar not with liberty, but well consist. Who can in reason then, or right, assume monarchy over such as live by right his equals? If in power and splendor less, in freedom equal. Not seeing any drops. I think we just had a bit of a hiccup there. Or can introduce law and edict on us, who without law err not, much less for this to be our lord, and look for adoration, to be the abuse of those imperial titles, which assert our being ordained to govern. Not to serve. Thus far his bold discourse without control had audience, when among the seraphim Abdiel, then whom none with more zeal adored the deity, and divine commands obeyed, stood up, and in a flame of zeal severe the current of his fury thus opposed. O argument blasphemous, false, and proud! Words which no ear ever to hear in heaven expected, least of all from thee, ingrate! In place thyself so high above thy peers, canst thou with impious obloquy condemn the just decree of God, pronounced and sworn that to his only Son, by right endued with regal scepter, every soul in heaven shall bend the knee, and in that honor do confess him rightful king? Unjust, thou sayest, flatly unjust, to bind with laws the free, and equal over equals to let reign, one over all with unsucceeded power. Shalt thou give law to God? Shalt thou dispute with him the points of liberty, who made thee what thou art, and formed the powers of heaven such as he pleased, and circumscribed their being? Yet by experience taught, we know how good, and of our good, and of our dignity. How provident he is, how far from thought to make us less, bent rather to exalt our happy state under one head more near united, but to grant it thee unjust, that equal over equals monarch reign, thyself Though great and glorious, dost thou count? Or all angelic nature joined in one, equal to him, begotten Son? By whom, as by his word, the mighty Father made all things? Even thee, and all the spirits of heaven, by him created in their bright degrees, crowned them with glory, and to their glory named thrones, dominations, princedoms, virtues, powers, essential powers, nor by his reign obscured, but more illustrious made, since he, the head, one of our number, thus reduced becomes. His laws, our laws, all honor to him done, returns our own. Cease then this impious rage, and tempt not these, but hasten to appease the incensed Father and the incensed Son, while pardon may be found in time besought. So spake the fervent angel, but his zeal none seconded, as out of season judged, or singular and rash, whereat rejoiced the apostate, and, more haughty, thus replied, that we were formed then, sayest thou? And the work of secondary hands, by task transferred from father to his son, strange point and new, doctrine which we would know whence learned, who saw when this creation was. Rememberest thou thy making, while the Maker gave thee being? We know no time when we were not as now. No, none before us, self-begot, self-raised, by our own quickening power, when fatal course had circled his full orb, the birth mature of this our native heaven, ethereal sons. Our puissance is our own right hand shall teach us highest deeds, by proof to try who is our equal. Then thou shalt behold whether by supplication we intend address, and to begirt the almighty throne, beseeching or besieging. This report, these tidings carry to the anointed king, and fly ere evil intercept thy flight. He said, and as the sound of waters deep, hoarse murmur echoed to his words' applause through the infinite host, nor less for that the flaming seraph fearless, though alone, encompassed round with foes, thus answered bold, O alienate from God, O spirit accursed, forsaken of all good, I see thy fall determined, and thy hapless crew involved in this perfidious fraud. Contagion spread both of thy crime and punishment. Henceforth no more be troubled how to quit the yoke of God's Messiah. Those indulgent laws will not be now vouchsafed. Other decrees against thee are gone forth without recall. That golden scepter which thou didst reject is now an iron rod to bruise and break thy disobedience. Well thou didst advise, yet not for thy advice or threats I fly, these wicked tents devoted, lest the wrath impendent, raging into sudden flame, distinguish not, for soon expect to feel his thunder on thy head, devouring fire. Then who created thee lamenting learn, when who can uncreate thee thou shalt know. So spake the seraph Abdiel, faithful found among the faithless, faithful only he, among the innumerable false, unmoved, unshaken, unseduced, unterrified, his loyalty he kept, his love, his zeal, nor number nor example with him wrought to swerve from truth, or change his constant mind. Though single, from amidst them forth he passed, long way through the hostile scorn which he sustained, superior, nor of violence feared aught, and with retorted scorn his back he turned on those proud towers to swift destruction doomed. That brings us to the end of Book 5. And I didn't realize that more than half of that book was just going to be Raphael giving backstory as secondhand story to Adam and Eve. I wish I'd just given Raphael the narrator voice. That was a long stretch of just slightly elevated register. All right, let's go ahead and take a quick break. The next book is about the same length as that one was, so we'll need about another hour to get through it. So let's go ahead and just take a couple minutes. And yeah, it was just keeping on repeating the choirs of the angels, their names, and it was a little repetitive. I mean, the whole thing is just like, oh, praise be, praise without end, praise because no better reason than. Can you tell I've fallen out with the church? All right, let's take a few minutes, take a break, stretch our legs, top up our drinks, and we'll be back in just a few minutes to continue with Book 6 of Paradise Lost. All right, we are back. Topped up the drink and got something a little bit softer because this is thirsty work. So, let's see what we can get on to next with Book 6. We're nearing about the halfway mark, so I'm actually not sure how much of this we can expect. Whether the original sin is going to be at the end, or somewhere in the middle, and we'll see the repercussions. I honestly don't know enough to know how much we're expected to see. So, we'll find out together, shall we? So, let us continue now with Book 6 of Paradise Lost. All night, the dreadless angel, unpursued, through heaven's wide champaign, held his way, till morn, waked by the circling hours, with rosy hand, unbarred the gates of light. There is a cave within the mount of God, fast by his throne, where light and darkness in perpetual round lodge and dislodge by turns, which makes through heaven grateful vicissitude, like day and night. Light issues forth, and at the other door obsequious darkness enters, till her hour to veil the heaven, though darkness there might well seem twilight here. And now went forth the morn, such as in highest heaven arrayed in gold imperial from before her vanished night, shot through with orient beams, when all the plain covered with thick embattled squadrons bright, chariots and flaming arms and fiery steeds, reflecting blaze on blaze, first met his view. War he perceived, war in procinct, and found already known what he for news had thought to have reported. Gladly then he mixed among those friendly powers, who him received with joy and acclamations loud, that of so many myriads fallen, yet one returned not lost. On to the sacred hill they led him high applauded, and present before the seat supreme, from whence a voice, from midst a golden cloud, thus mild was heard. Servant of God, well done, well hast thou fought the better fight, who single hast maintained against revolted multitudes the cause of truth, in word mightier than they in arms, and for the testimony of truth hast borne universal reproach, far worse to bear than violence, for this was all thy care, to stand approved in sight of God, though worlds judged thee perverse. The easier conquest now remains thee, aided by this host of friends, back on thy foes more glorious to return, than scorned thou didst depart, and to subdue by force, who reason for their law refuse, right, reason for their law, and for their king, Messiah, who by right of merit reigns. Go, Michael, of celestial armies prince, and thou in military prowess next, Gabriel, lead forth to battle these my sons invincible, lead forth my armed saints, by thousands and by millions, ranged for fight, equal in number to that godless crew rebellious, them with fire and hostile arms fearless assault, and, to the brow of heaven pursuing, drive them out from God and bliss, into their place of punishment, the gulf of Tartarus, which already opens wide, his fiery chaos to receive their fall. So spake the sovereign voice, and clouds began to darken all the hill, and smoke to roll in dusky wreaths, reluctant flames. The sign of wrath awakened, nor with less dread the loud ethereal trumpet from on high 'gan blow, at which command the powers militant, that stood for heaven in mighty quadrate joined of union irresistible, moved on in silence their bright legions, to the sound of instrumental harmony that breathed heroic ardor to adventurous deeds, under their godlike leaders. In the cause of God and his Messiah, on they move, indissolubly firm, nor obvious hill, nor straightening vale, nor wood, nor stream divides their perfect ranks. For high above the ground their march was, and the passive air upbore their nimble tread. As when the total kind of birds, in orderly array on wing, came summoned over Eden to receive their names of thee, so over many a tract of heaven they marched, and many a province wide, tenfold the length of this terrain. At last, far in the horizon to the north appeared, from skirt to skirt, a fiery region, stretched in Batalos aspect, and nearer view bristled with upright beams innumerable, of rigid spears, and helmets thronged, and shields various with boastful argument portrayed. The banded powers of Satan, hasting on with furious expedition, for they weened that self-same day, by fight or by surprise, to win the mount of God, and on his throne to set the envier of his state, the proud aspirer. But their thoughts proved fond and vain in the midway. Though strange to us it seemed, at first, that angel should with angel war, and in fierce hosting meet, who wont to meet so oft in festivals of joy and love, unanimous, as sons of one great sire, hymning the eternal Father. But the shout of battle now began, and rushing sound of onset ended soon each milder thought. High in the midst, exalted as a god, the apostate in his sun-bright chariot sat, idol of majesty divine, enclosed with flaming cherubim and golden shields. Then, lighted from his gorgeous throne, for now, twixt host and host but narrow space was left, a dreadful interval, and front to front presented stood in terrible array of hideous length. Before the cloudy van, on the rough edge of battle ere it joined, Satan, with vast and haughty strides advanced, came towering, armed in adamant and gold. Abdiel, that sight endured not, where he stood among the mightiest, bent on highest deeds, and thus his own undaunted heart explores. O heaven, that such resemblance of the highest should yet remain, where faith and reality remain not. Wherefore should not strength and might, where virtue fails, or weakest prove where boldest, though to fight unconquerable? His puissance, trusting in the Almighty's aid, I mean to try, whose reason I have tried, unsound and false. Nor is it aught but just, that he, who in debate of truth hath won, should win in arms, in both disputes alike victor. Though brutish that contest, and foul, when reason hath to deal with force, yet so most reason is that reason overcome. So pondering, and from his armed peers forth stepping opposite, halfway he met his daring foe, at this prevention more incensed, and thus securely him defied. Proud art thou met. Thy hope was to have reached the height of thy aspiring unopposed, the throne of God unguarded, and his side abandoned, at the terror of thy power, or potent tongue. Fool! Not to think how vain against the omnipotent to rise in arms, who out of smallest things could, without end, have raised incessant armies to defeat thy folly, or with solitary hand, reaching beyond all limit, at one blow, unaided, could have finished thee, and whelmed thy legions under darkness. But thou seest all are not of thy train. There be who faith prefer, and piety to God, though then to thee not visible, when I alone seemed in thy world erroneous to dissent from all my sect thou seest. Now learn too late, how few sometimes may know, when thousands err, whom the grand foe, with scornful eye askance, thus answered, ill for thee. But in wished hour of my revenge, first sought for, thou returnest from flight, seditious angel, to receive thy merited reward, the first essay of this right hand provoked, since first that tongue inspired with contradiction durst oppose a third part of the gods in synod met their deities to assert, who, while they feel vigor divine within them, can allow omnipotence to none. But well thou comest before thy fellows, ambitious to win from me some plume, that thy success may show destruction to the rest. This pause between, unanswered lest thou boast, to let thee know, at first I thought that liberty and heaven to heavenly souls had been all one, but now I see that most through sloth had rather serve ministering spirits trained up in feast and song. Such hast thou armed the minstrelsy of heaven, servility with freedom to contend, as both their deeds compared this day shall prove. To whom, in brief, thus Abdiel stern replied, Apostate! Still thou errest, nor end wilt find of erring, from the path of truth remote. Unjustly thou depravest it with the name of servitude, to serve whom God ordains, or nature, God and nature bid the same. When he who rules is worthiest, and excels them whom he governs, this is servitude, to serve the unwise, or him who hath rebelled against his worthier, as thine now serve thee. Thyself not free, but to thyself enthralled. Yet lewdly darest our ministering upbraid. Reign thou in hell thy kingdom, and let me serve in heaven God ever blessed, and his divine behests obey, worthiest to be obeyed. Yet chains in hell, not realms expect, meanwhile, from me returned, as erst thou saidst from flight, this greeting on thy impious crest receive. So saying, a noble stroke he lifted high, which hung not, but so swift with tempest fell on the proud crest of Satan, that no sight nor motion of swift thought less could his shield such ruin intercept. 10 paces huge he back recoiled, the 10th on bended knee his massy spear upstayed, as if on earth winds underground, or waters forcing way. Sidelong had pushed a mountain from his seat. Half sunk with all his pines, amazement seized the rebel thrones, but greater rage to see thus foiled their mightiest, ours joy filled and shout, presage of victory and fierce desire of battle. Whereat Michael bid sound the archangel trumpet. Through the vast of heaven it sounded, and the faithful armies rung Hosanna to the highest. Nor stood at gaze the adverse legions, nor less hideous joined the horrid shock. Now storming fury rose, and clamour such as heard in heaven till now was never. Arms on armour, clashing braid horrible discord, and the madding wheels of brazen chariots raised. Dire was the noise of conflict. Overhead the dismal hiss of fiery darts and flaming volleys flew, and flying vaulted either host with fire. So under fiery cope together rushed both battles main with ruinous assault and inextinguishable rage. All heaven resounded, and had earth been then, all earth had to her centre shook. What wonder, when millions of fierce encountering angels fought on either side, the least of whom could wield these elements, and arm him with the force of all their regions. How much more of power, army against army, numberless to raise dreadful combustion warring, and disturb, though not destroy, their happy native seat. Had not the eternal King omnipotent, from his strong hold of heaven, high overruled and limited their might, though numbered such as each divided legion must have seemed a numerous host, in strength each armed to hand a legion, led in fight, yet leaders seemed each warrior single, as in chief, expert when to advance or stand, or turn the sway of battle open when, and when to close the ridges of grim war. No thought of flight, none of retreat, no unbecoming deed that argued fear. Each on himself relied, as only in his arm the moment lay of victory. Deeds of eternal fame were done, but infinite, for wide was spread that war and various. Sometimes on firm ground, standing fight then, soaring on main wing, tormented all air seemed then conflicting fire. Long time in even scale the battle hung, till Satan, who that day prodigious power had shown, and met in arms no equal, ranging through the dire attack, of fighting seraphim confused, at length saw where the sword of Michael smote, and felled squadrons at once, with huge two-handed sway brandished aloft. The horrid edge came down wide wasting, such destruction to withstand. He hasted, and opposed the rocky orb of tenfold adamant, his ample shield. Of vast circumference, at his approach, the great archangel from his warlike toil surceased, and glad, as hoping here to end intestine war in heaven, the arch-foe subdued, or captive dragged in chains with hostile frown and visage all inflamed, first thus began: Author of evil, unknown till thy revolt, unnamed in heaven, now plenteous as thou seest these acts of hateful strife, hateful to all, thou heaviest by just measure on thyself and thy adherents. How hast thou disturbed heaven's blessed peace, and into nature brought misery, uncreated till the crime of thy rebellion? How hast thou instilled thy malice into thousands once upright and faithful, now proved false? But think not here to trouble holy rest. Heaven casts thee out from all her confines. Heaven, the seat of bliss, brooks not the works of violence and war. Hence then, and evil go with thee along, thy offspring to the place of evil, hell, thou and thy wicked crew. There mingle broils ere this avenging sword begin thy doom, or some more sudden vengeance, winged from God, precipitate thee with augmented pain. So spake the Prince of Angels, to whom thus the adversary: Nor think thou with wind of airy threats to all whom yet with deeds thou canst not. Hast thou turned the least of these to flight, or if to fall, but that they rise unvanquished, easier to transact with me that thou shouldst hope imperious, and with threats to chase me hence? Ere not, that so shall end the strife which thou callest evil, but we style the strife of glory, which we mean to win, or turn this heaven itself into the hell thou fablest. Here, however, to dwell free, if not to reign. Meanwhile, thy utmost force, and join him named Almighty to thy aid. I fly not, but have sought thee far and nigh. They ended parley, and both addressed for fight, unspeakable, for who, though with the tongue of angels can relate, or to what things liken on earth conspicuous, that may lift human imagination to such height of godlike power, for likest gods they seemed. Stood they or moved in stature, motion, arms, fit to decide the empire of great heaven. Now waved their fiery swords, and in the air made horrid circles. Two broad suns their shields blazed opposite, while expectation stood in horror. From each hand with speed retired, where erst was thickest fight, the angelic throng, and left large field, unsafe within the wind of such commotion, such as to set forth great things by small. If nature's concord broke, among the constellations war were sprung. Two planets, rushing from aspect malign, of fiercest opposition in mid-sky, should combat, and their jarring spheres confound. Together both, with next to almighty arm uplifted imminent, one stroke they aimed that might determine, and not need repeat. As not of power at once, nor odds appeared, in might or swift prevention, but the sword of Michael from the armory of God was given him, tempered so that neither keen nor solid might resist that edge. It met the sword of Satan, with steep force to smite descending, and in half-cut sheer, not stayed, but with swift wheel reverse, deep entering, shared all his right side. Then Satan first knew pain, and writhed him to and fro convolved, so sore the grinding sword with discontinuous wound passed through him. But the ethereal substance closed, not long divisible, and from the gash a stream of nectarous humor issuing flowed sanguine, such as celestial spirits may bleed, and all his armor stained, erewhile so bright. Forthwith on all sides to his aid was run, by angels many and strong, who interposed defense, while others bore him on their shields back to his chariot, where it stood retired from off the files of war. There they him laid, gnashing for anguish, and despite, and shame, to find himself not matchless, and his pride humbled by such rebuke. So far beneath his confidence to equal God in power. Yet soon he healed. For spirits that live throughout, vital in every part, not as frail man in entrails, head and heart, liver or reins, cannot but by annihilating die. Nor in their liquid texture mortal wound receive, no more than could the fluid air. All heart they live, all head, all eye, all ear, all intellect, all sense. And as they please, they limn themselves, and color, shape, or size assume as likes them best. Condense or rare, meanwhile, in other parts, like deeds deserved memorial, where the might of Gabriel fought, and with fierce ensigns pierced the deep array of Moloch, furious king who him defied, and at his chariot wheels to drag him bound, threatened, not from the Holy One of Heaven, refrained his tongue blasphemous, but anon, down, cloven to the waist, with shattered arms, and uncouth pain fled bellowing. On each wing, Uriel and Raphael, his vaunting foe, though huge and in a rock of diamond armed, vanquished Adrammelech and Osmodai, two potent thrones, that to be less than gods, disdained. But meaner thoughts learned in their flight, mangled with ghastly wounds through plate and mail, nor stood unmindful Abdiel to annoy the atheist crew, but with redoubled blow Ariel and Arioch, and the violence of Ramiel, scorched and blasted, overthrew. I might relate of thousands, and their names eternize here on earth, but those elect angels contended with their fame in heaven. Seek not the praise of men. The other sort, in might, though wondrous, and in acts of war, nor of renown less eager, yet by doom cancelled from heaven and sacred memory. Nameless, in dark oblivion let them dwell, for strength from them divided, and from just illaudable not merits but dispraise and ignominy. Yet to glory aspires vainglorious, and through infamy seek fame. Therefore, eternal silence be their doom. And now, their mightiest quelled, the battle swerved, with many an inroad gored, deformed rout, entered, and found disorder. All the ground which shivered, armor strewn, and on a heap chariot and charioteer lay overturned, and fiery foaming steeds, what stood recoiled or wearied, through the faint satanic host, defensive scarce, or with pale fear surprised. Then first with fear surprised, and sense of pain, fled ignominious, to such evil brought by sin of disobedience, till that hour not liable to fear, or flight, or pain. Far otherwise, the inviolable saints, in cubic phalanx firm, advanced entire, invulnerable, impenetrably armed. Such high advantages their innocence gave them above their foes, not to have sinned, not to have disobeyed. In fight they stood unwearied, unobnoxious to be pained by wound, though from their place by violence moved. Now night her course began, and over heaven, inducing darkness, grateful truce imposed, and silence on the odious din of war. Under her cloudy covert both retired, victor and vanquished. On the foughten field, Michael and his angels prevalent, encamping, placed in guard their watches round, cherubic waving fires. On the other part, Satan with his rebellious disappeared, far in the dark dislodged, and void of rest, his potentates to council called by night. And in the midst, thus undismayed began. Oh, now in danger tried, now known in arms not to be overpowered, companions dear, found worthy not of liberty alone, too mean pretense. But what we more affect, honor, dominion, glory, and renown, who have sustained one day in doubtful fight, and if one day, why not eternal days? What heaven's Lord had powerfulest to send against us from his throne, and a judge sufficient to subdue us to his will? But proves not so. Then fallible it seems, of future we may deem him, though till now omniscient thought. True is, less firmly armed, some disadvantage we endured, and pain. Till now not known, but known as soon contemned, since now we find this our imperial form, incapable of mortal injury, imperishable, and though pierced with wound, soon closing, by native vigor beheld. Of evil then so small as easy think the remedy, perhaps more valid arms, weapons more violent, when next we meet, may serve to better us, and worse our foes, or equal what between us made the odds, in nature none, if other hidden cause left them superior, while we can preserve unhurt our minds and understanding sound, due search and consultation will disclose. He sat, and in the assembly next up stood Nisroch, of principalities the prime. As one, he stood escaped from cruel fight, sore toiled, his riven arms to havoc hewn, and cloudy in aspect thus answering spake. Deliverer from new lords, leader to free enjoyment of our right as gods, yet hard for gods, and too unequal work we find. Against unequal arms to fight in pain, against unpained impassive, from which evil ruin must needs ensue. For what avails valor or strength, though matchless, quelled with pain, which all subdues and makes remiss the hands of mightiest? sense of pleasure we may well spare out of life, perhaps, and not repine, but live content, which is the calmest life. But pain is perfect misery, the worst of evils, and excessive, overturns all patience. He who therefore can invent with what more forcible we may offend our yet unwounded enemies, or arm ourselves with like defence, to me deserves no less than for deliverance what we owe. Whereto with look composed Satan replied, not uninvented that, which thou aright believest so main to our success, I bring. Which of us, who upholds the bright surface of this ethereous mould whereupon we stand, this continent of spacious heaven adorned with plant, fruit, flower, ambrosial, gems, and gold, whose eyes so superficially surveys these things as not to mind from whence they grow, deep underground, materials dark and crude, of spirituous and fiery spume, till touched with heaven's ray and tempered, they shoot forth so beauteous, opening to the ambient light. These in their dark nativity the deep shall yield us, pregnant with infernal flame, which into hollow engines, long and round, thick rammed, at the other bore with touch of fire, dilated and infuriate, shall send forth from far, with thundering noise among our foes, such implements of mischief as shall dash to pieces and o'erwhelm whatever stands adverse, that they shall fear we have disarmed the thunderer of his only dreaded bolt. Not long shall be our labour, yet ere dawn, effect shall end our wish. Meanwhile revive, abandon fear, to strength and counsel joined, would think nothing hard, much less to be despaired. He ended, and his words were their drooping cheer enlightened, and their languished hope revived. The invention all admired, and each how he to be the inventor missed, so easy it seemed, once found, which yet unfound most would have thought impossible. Yet haply, of thy race in future days, if malice should abound, someone intent on mischief, or inspired with devilish machination, might devise like instrument to plague the sons of men, for sin on war and mutual slaughter bent. Lucifer invented cannons. Cool. Forthwith, from council to the work they flew. None arguing stood, innumerable hands were ready. In a moment up they turned wide the celestial soil, and saw beneath the originals of nature in their crude conception. Sulphurous and nitrous foam they found. They mingled, and with subtle art concocted and adjusted they reduced to blackest grain, and into store conveyed, part hidden veins digged up, nor hath this earth entrails unlike of mineral and stone, whereof to found their engines and their balls of missive ruin, part incentive reed, provide pernicious with one touch to fire. So all ere day spring, under conscious night, secret they finished, and in order set, with silent circumspection unespied. Now when fair morn orient in heaven appeared, up rose the victor angels, and to arms the matin trumpet sung. In arms they stood, of golden panoply, refulgent host, soon bandied. Others from the dawning hills look round, and scouts each coast light-armed scour, each quarter to descry the distant foe, where lodged, or whither fled, or if for fight in motion or in a halt, him soon they met. Under spread ensigns moving high, in slow but firm battalion, back with steadiest sail, Zophiel, of cherubim the swiftest wing, came flying, and in mid-air aloud thus cried, Arm, warriors, arm for fight, the foe at hand! Whom fled we thought will save us long pursuit this day, fear not his flight. So thick a cloud he comes, and settled in his face I see sad resolution and secure, Let each his adamant coat gird well, and each fit well his helm. Gripe fast his orbed shield, borne even o'er high, for this day will pour down, if I conjecture aught, no drizzling shower, but rattling storm of arrows barbed with fire. So warned he them, aware themselves, and soon in order quit of all impediment. Instant, without disturb they took alarm, and onward moved and battled. When, behold, not distant far, with heavy pace the foe, approaching gross and huge, in hollow cube, training his devilish enginery, impaled on every side with shadowing squadrons deep, to hide the fraud. At interview both stood a while, but suddenly, at head appeared Satan, and thus was heard commanding loud, vanguard, to right and left, the front unfold, that all may see who hate us, how we seek peace and composure, and with open breast stand ready to receive them, if they like our overture, and turn not back perverse. But that I doubt. However, witness heaven. Heaven witness thou anon, while we discharge freely our part. Ye, who appointed stand, do as you have in charge, and briefly touch what we propound, and loud that all may hear. So scoffing, in ambiguous words, he scarce had ended, when to right and left the front divided, and to either flank retired, which, to our eyes discovered, new and strange, a triple-mounted row of pillars laid, on wheels for like to pillars most they seemed, or hollowed bodies made of oak or fir, with branches lopped in wood or mountain felled. Brass, iron, stony mold had not their mouths with hideous orifice gaped on us wide, portending a hollow truce. At each behind a seraph stood, and in his hand a reed stood waving tipped with fire, while we, suspense, collected, stood within our thoughts amused. Not long, for sudden, all at once their reeds put forth, and to a narrow vent applied, with nicest touch, immediate, in a flame, soon obscured with smoke, all heaven appeared from those deep-throated engines belch, whose roar and bellowed with outrageous noise the air, and all her entrails tore, disgorging foul their devilish glut, chained thunderbolts and hail of iron globes, which on the victor host levelled, with such impetuous fury smote, that, whom they hit, none on their feet might stand, though standing else as rocks, but down they fell by thousands, angel on archangel rolled. The sooner for their arms, unarmed, they might have easily, as spirits, evaded swift, by quick contraction or remove, but now foul dissipation followed, and forced rout, nor served it to relax their serried files. What should they do? If on they rushed, repulse repeated, and indecent overthrow, doubled, would render them yet more despised. And to their foes a laughter, for in view stood ranked of seraphim another row, in posture to displode their second tire of thunder, back defeated to return they worse abhorred. Satan beheld their plight, and to his mates thus in derision called, O friends, why come not on these victors proud, ere while they fierce were coming, and when we, to entertain them fair with open front and breast, what could we more? Propounded terms of composition, straight they changed their minds, flew off, and into strange vagaries fell, as they would dance, yet for a dance they seemed somewhat extravagant and wild, perhaps for joy of offered peace. But I suppose, if our proposals once again were heard, we should compel them to a quick result. To whom thus Belial, in like gamesome mood, Leader, Ah, the terms we sent were terms of weight, of hard contents, and full of far-surged home, such as we might perceive amused them all, and stumbled many. Who receives them right had need from head to foot well understand. Not understood, this gift they have besides. They show us when our foes walk not upright. So they among themselves in pleasant veins stood scoffing, heightened in their thoughts beyond all doubt of victory. Eternal might, to match with their inventions they presumed so easy, and of his thunder made a scorn, and all his host derided, while they stood a while in trouble. But they stood not long. Rage prompted them at length, and found them arms against such hellish mischief fit to oppose forthwith. Behold the excellence, the power, which God hath in his mighty angels placed. Their arms away they threw, and to the hills, for earth hath this variety from heaven, of pleasure situate in hill and dale. Light as the lightning glimpse they ran, they flew, from their foundations loosening, to and fro they plucked the seated hills, with all their load, rocks, waters, woods, and by the shaggy tops uplifting, bore them in their hands. Amaze, be sure, and terror seized the rebel host, when coming towards them so dread they saw the bottom of the mountains upward turned, till on those curled engines triple row they saw them whelmed, and all their confidence under the weight of mountains buried deep, themselves invaded necks, and on their heads main promontories flung, which in the air came shadowing, and oppressed whole legions armed. Their armor helped them harm, crushed in and bruised into their substance pent, which wrought them pain implacable, and many a dolorous groan. Long struggling underneath, ere they could wind out of such prison, those spirits of purest light, purest at first, now gross by sinning grown. The rest, in imitation to like arms, betook them, and the neighboring hills uptore. So hills amid the air encountered hills, hurled to and fro with ejaculation dire. That underground they fought in dismal shade, infernal noise. War seemed a civil game to this uproar. Horrid confusion heaped upon confusion rose, and now all heaven had gone to wrack, with ruin overspread. Had not the Almighty Father, where he sits shrined in his sanctuary of heaven secure, consulting on the sum of things foreseen this tumult, and permitted all advised, that his great purpose he might so fulfill, to honor his anointed Son avenged upon his enemies, and to declare all power on him transferred, whence to his Son, the assessor of his throne, he thus began, effulgence of my glory, Son beloved, Son in whose face invisible is beheld visibly what by deity I am, and in whose hand what by decree I do. Second omnipotence. 2 days are past, 2 days, as we compute the days of heaven, since Michael and his powers went forth to tame these disobedient. Sore hath been their fight, and likeliest was when 2 such foes met armed. For to themselves I left them, and thou knowest, equal in their creation they were formed, save what sin hath impaired, which yet hath wrought insensibly. For I suspend their doom, whence, in perpetual fight, they needs must last endless, and no solution will be found. War wearied hath performed what war can do, and to disordered rage let loose the reins, with mountains as with weapons, which makes weapons armed, which makes wild work in heaven, and dangerous to the main. 2 days are therefore past, the 3rd is thine, For thee I have ordained it, and thus far have suffered, that the glory may be thine, of ending this great war, since none but thou can end it. Into thee such virtue and grace immense I have transfused, that all may know in heaven and hell thy power above compare. And this perverse commotion governed thus, to manifest thee worthiest to be heir of all things, to be heir and to be king by sacred unction, thy deserved right. Go then, thou mightiest, in thy father's might, ascend my chariot, guide the rapid wheels that shake heaven's basis, bring forth all my war. My bow and thunder, my almighty arms, gird on, and sword upon thy puissant thigh, pursue these sons of darkness, drive them out from all heaven's bounds into the utter deep. There let them learn, as likes them, to despise God and Messiah, his appointed king. He said, and on his son with rays direct shone full, he, all his father full expressed, ineffably, into his face received. And thus the filial Godhead, answering, spake, O Father, O supreme of heavenly thrones, first, highest, holiest, best, thou always seekest to glorify thy Son. I always thee, as is most part. This I my glory account, my exaltation, and my whole delight, that thou, in me well pleased, declarest thy will fulfilled, which to fulfill is all my bliss. Sceptre and power thy giving I assume, and gladlier I shall reside, when in the end thou shalt be all in all, and I in thee forever, and in me all whom thou lovest. But whom thou hatest, I hate, and can put on thy terrors, as I put thy mildness on. Image of thee in all things, and shall soon, armed with thy might, rid heaven of these rebelled. So their prepared ill mansion driven down, the chains of darkness, and the undying worm, that from thy just obedience could revolt, whom to obey is happiness entire. Then shall thy saints unmixed, and from the impure far separate, circling thy holy mount, unfeigned hallelujahs, to sing thee hymns of high praise, and I among them chief. So said he, o'er his sceptre bowing rose, from the right hand of glory where he sat. And the third sacred morn began to shine, dawning through heaven. Forth rushed with whirlwind sound the chariot of paternal deity, flashing thick flames, wheel within wheel undrawn, itself instinct with spirit, but convoyed by 4 cherubic shapes. 4 faces, each had wondrous as with stars their bodies all, and wings were set with eyes the wheels of beryl, and careering fires with between. Over their heads a crystal firmament, whereon a sapphire throne, inlaid with pure amber and colors of the showery arch. He, in celestial panoply all armed of radiant Urim, work divinely wrought, ascended. At his right hand Victory sat eagle-winged. Beside him hung his bow, and quiver with 3 bolted thunder stored. And from about him fierce effusion rolled of smoke, and bickering flame, and sparkles dire. Attended with 10,000 saints, he onward came. Far off his coming shone, and 20,000, I their number heard, chariots of God, half on each hand, were seen. He on the wings of cherub rode sublime on the crystalline sky, in sapphire throned, illustrious far and wide, but by his own first seen, them unexpected joy surprised. When the great ensign of Messiah blazed, aloft by angels borne, his sign in heaven, under whose conduct Michael soon reduced his army, circumfused on either wing, under their head embodied all in one. Before him divine power his way prepared. At his command the uprooted hills retired, each to his place. They heard his voice and went obsequious. Heaven his wonted face renewed, and with fresh flowerets hill and valley smiled. This saw his hapless face, but stood obdured, and to rebellious fight rallied their powers. Insensate hope conceiving from despair, in heavenly spirits could such perverseness dwell? But to convince the proud, what signs avail, or wonders move the obdurate to relent? They, hardened more by what might most proclaim, grieving to see his glory, at the sight took envy, and, aspiring to his height, stood re-embattled fierce, by force or fraud, weening to prosper, and at length prevail against God and Messiah, or to fall in universal ruin at last. And now, to final battle drew, disdaining flight, or faint retreat, when the great Son of God to all his host on either hand thus spake. Stand still in bright array, ye saints, here stand. Ye angels armed, this day from battle rest. Faithful hath been your warfare, and of God accepted, fearless in his righteous cause, and as ye have received, so have ye done, invincibly. But of this cursed crew the punishment to other hand belongs. Vengeance is his, or whose he sole appoints. Number to this day's work is not ordained, nor multitude, stand only, and behold God's indignation on these godless, poured by me, not you, but me, they have despised, yet envied. Against me is all their rage, because the Father, to whom in heaven's prim kingdom and power and glory appertains, hath honored me, according to his will. Therefore, to me their doom he hath assigned, that they may have their wish to try with me in battle which the stronger proves, they all, or I alone against them, since by strength they measure all of other excellence not emulous, nor care who them excels, nor other strife with them do I vouchsafe. So spake the Son, and into terror changed his countenance, too severe to be beheld, and full of wrath bent on his enemies. At once the four spread out their starry wings, with dreadful shade contiguous, and the orbs of his fierce chariot rolled, as with the sound of torrent floods, or of a numerous host. He on his impious foes right onward drove, gloomy as night. Under his burning wheels the steadfast Empyrean shook throughout, all but the throne of God itself. Full soon among them he appeared, in his right hand grasping 10,000 thunders, which he sent before him, such as in their souls infixed plagues. They, astonished, all resistance lost, all courage down their idle weapons dropped. O'er shields and helmed heads he rode, of thrones and mighty seraphim prostrate, that wished the mountains now might be again thrown on them, as a shelter from his ire. Nor less, on either side tempestuous fell his arrows, from the fourfold visaged four distinct with eyes, and from the living wheels distinct alike with multitude of eyes. one spirit in them ruled, and every eye glared lightning, and shot forth pernicious fire among the accursed, that withered all their strength, and of their wonted vigor left them drained, exhausted, spiritless, afflicted, fallen. Yet half his strength he put not forth, but checked his thunder in mid-volley, for he meant not to destroy, but root them out of heaven. The overthrown he raised, and as a herd of goats or timorous flock together thronged, drove them before him, thunderstruck, pursued with terrors and with furies to the bounds and crystal wall of heaven, which, opening wide, rolled inward. In a spacious gap disclosed, into the wasteful deep, the monstrous sight struck them with horror backward. But far worse urged them behind. Headlong themselves they threw down from the verge of heaven. Eternal wrath burnt after them to the bottomless pit. Hell heard the unsufferable noise. Hell saw heaven ruining from heaven, and would have fled affrighted. But strict fate had cast too deep her dark foundations, and too fast had bound. 9 days they fell, confounded chaos roared, and felt tenfold confusion in their fall. Through his wild anarchy, so huge a rout encumbered him with ruin. Hell at last, yawning, received them whole, and on them closed. Hell, their fit habitation, fraught with fire unquenchable, the house of woe and pain, disburdened, heaven rejoiced, and soon repaired her mural breach, returning whence it rolled, sole victor, from the expulsion of his foes. Messiah, his triumphal chariot turned. To meet him all his saints, who silent stood, eye-witnesses of his almighty acts, with jubilee advanced, and as they went, shaded with branching palm, each order bright, sung triumph, and him sung victorious King, Son, Heir, and Lord, to him dominion given, worthiest to reign. He, celebrated, rode triumphant through mid-heaven into the courts and temple of his mighty Father throned on high, who into glory him received, where now he sits at the right hand of bliss, thus measuring things in heaven by things on earth at thy request, and that thou mayest beware by what is past, to thee I have revealed what might have else to human race been hid, the discord which befell, and war in heaven among the angelic powers, and the deep fall of those too high aspiring, who rebelled with Satan. He who envies now thy state, who now is plotting how he may seduce thee also from obedience, that with him, bereaved of happiness, thou mayest partake his punishment, eternal misery, which would be all his solace and revenge, as a despot done against the Most High. Thee once to gain companion of his woe, but listen not to his temptations. Warn thy weaker. Let it profit thee to have heard, by terrible example, the reward of disobedience. Firm they might have stood, yet fell. Remember, and fear to transgress. That brings us to the end of Book 6 of Paradise Lost. So remember, that entire book was still Raphael telling Adam and Eve the story of the war in heaven and of the fall. But I think it was better in the narrator voice. Give it a little bit more life to that. And you're right. That absolutely the numbers kind of lost meaning. It's like power levels in DBZ. It's just like at some point the numbers stopped mattering anymore. They just kept going up and up and up and up and up. And then at the end, Jesus is like, "Nah, I'd win." And that's my blasphemy for the night. But honestly, that was one of the more evocative chapters we've seen so far. It was very dense. You know what? Raphael with the size is best Raphael. You can't convince me otherwise. But yeah, that was a pretty good book. It was a good chapter there. It was evocative. It sort of played on the back and forth between the pride of Satan and the, like, Lucifer building himself up and then getting immediately humbled. And then there we go. So a good way to end for the night. We had the relatively dry first chapter of Adam and Eve going back and forth, talking about their dream, and then Raphael coming in by to let them know what's up. Little bit of a warning. And then to spin it on its head, we get back to the grandiose, huge of scope, massive war in heaven itself. And culminating in the fall. So that'll be a good place to go. And it looks like the next book will be discussing more of the fall. So this sort of like culminated in the fall, and the fall itself will be what we start with next time. And that'll be on Tuesday. So, with that, let's go ahead and call it an evening. I don't know about you guys, but I've got tomorrow off. Hooray, hurrah, Labor Day. And can just sleep and enjoy it. Yeah. Raphael just like, yep. I need to rewatch some of the old ones. I don't know, the live action ones were awful but great in their own way. I loved them. And then the 90s cartoons were just perfect. Just perfect. I've been told that one of the recent cartoons is pretty good, actually. So maybe I'll give that a chance sometime. I don't watch a lot of TV, but for TMNT, I might. I just might. Alright, guys. Yeah, that's... I do think the last media I've taken them in with was... I think there was a crossover comic. Oh, man, the NES game was monstrous. I loved it and hated it. It's a damn water level. Could never get that shit. But yeah, I think there was a crossover comic that I read not too terribly long ago with Batman, and it was actually great. Do recommend. Oh, that damn pink seaweed. The rest of the game, like the first level, fine. You get into the water level, and you're just like, done. You just like, you have to get through the first level with all 4 turtles. And then you just get through the second one, assuming you're going to lose 1. Maybe 2. That was classic Nintendo hard games. Man, I'll just keep talking and reminiscing if I let that go on. So, let's go ahead and cut ourselves off here, because I do need to get some food. So let's go ahead and call this an evening. Thank you very much for joining us in our adventure through the retelling of the fall. We've seen a little bit of a different perspective tonight. We saw the warning come down from heaven to let Adam and Eve know that they may be beguiled or led astray. So they've had warning. Now it's only up to time to see how the father of lies is able to twist that warning into his own sort of gain. We'll see if that comes up on Tuesday. Until then, thank you very much for joining us. If you have not yet, I request, just drop a line to put a like on the stream. Maybe subscribe to the channel. Do our little evenings shill so that we can grow our channel, grow our community. We've got a nice little book club here. We need to convince the YouTube to send the algorithm to send people our way. So, that's enough out of me for tonight. I'm tired. This is a lot of talking and very dense reading. So, I am off to bed. Have a wonderful night, guys. Thank you for joining us, and we'll be back on Tuesday. Bye now.